Welcome to Leap Leaders Unplugged, where your host, me, Siobhan Nealon, takes you through an exploration of the extraordinary paths of influential leaders and innovators from both the corporate and the nonprofit sectors, who are both making impactful changes and redefining the future of business and beyond. Through these engaging discussions, the podcast seeks to empower you to spark innovation and change in your own organizations or your own career, transcending both financial success to helping you fulfill aspirations for purpose and freedom in all aspects of working life. Whether you're a corporate executive, an inspiring entrepreneur, a nonprofit leader, or an established business owner on a personal quest for self-discovery, Leap Leaders Unplugged provides the motivation, resources, and community to guide your journey. Don't forget to subscribe now and join our movement of visionary leaders who are not only navigating, but actively shaping and hopefully revolutionizing how the world is built. Welcome, everybody, to Leap Leaders Unplugged. This is Siobhan Nealon, the CEO and Chief Talent Officer for Leap Ahead Talent, also Leap to Success Executive Coaching. And I'm really excited today that my really dear friend, Jackson Aimiuwu, is here from AWS. We used to work together at AWS and have become really good friends. So I'm very honored that you took the time from your extremely busy schedule to talk with me today and talk a little bit about all the cool innovative things that you've done and some really cool learning lessons that we've learned together in this journey about becoming a leader, how to build leadership teams, how to create innovative offerings for our customers. So I'm excited. So welcome, Jackson.
Well, thank you so much. Honestly, I'm just as excited, and I feel like I'm not. I feel like we're like really good friends, though. But I'm understanding I'm not the first. I'd have loved to be the first, but I'll take any position. To be honest with you, really excited. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This is fantastic. And by the way, a lot of kudos for you for doing this as well. I think this is absolutely fantastic. I just knowing you, I'm like, this is you. This is
Aw,
you. It's
thanks.
amazing. Yeah.
Well, I've had you on many a panel. I can't even over the years.
Mhm.
Anytime I could put you on a panel in front of leadership teams, I was yeah, Jackson. So I feel like
and I
it's been.
and I never say no.
I know. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
of course, of course.
It was great. And so great you're here. And why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got here? What are you doing now? And then a little bit when we first met, where you were working, and kind of a little bit of your trajectory, so everybody has a sense of where you're coming from and all those cool, innovative stories that we're about to tell. They'll make more context.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So right now, I just took on a new role in the US, where I'm going to be leading the team of solutions architects for the US payments business, right? So it's a newly formed organization within AWS, and I'm pretty excited about that because
Mhm.
these are the customers that help to make money move within the US, right? So I'm really glad to be a part of that conversation. But prior to this role, I actually led the team of solutions architects for Canada's enterprise business, which is essentially customers that over $75 million in revenue across Canada.
Mhm.
It was an exciting team. I absolutely love that team. Not saying I don't love my new team, but I worked with that team for over 4.5 years. So we got a chance to really do a lot of amazing things, right? So always be there to my heart and always rooting for them. But prior to joining AWS, I led the team of solutions. I actually led a pretty large team at Canadian Tire. So Canadian Tire is Canada's second largest retailer. So essentially, the name you hear Canadian Tire, and everybody's like, "Oh, did you all sell tires?" Well, the history is that Canadian Tire actually started as a tire company, maybe back in like 1920s or something like that, and but it quickly branched over time to many other domains as well, right? So that you can imagine Canadian Tire, they now cover, camping gears, they cover your household goods, they cover just about everything. But it was an amazing experience over there. I looked after everything technology from networking to automation to even some of the early cloud journey, productivity, compute, networking, storage, just about everything around technology. I covered that. So it was a pretty exciting time for me as well. Learned a lot. That continues to obviously help me support our customers, as I'm on the vendor side today.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of where we met. Was I remember talking,
Yes.
I was like, you didn't hire, explain to me this. I remember talking to you for a role. And I think the role that I helped hire you for was the enterprise team, right? You stayed
It
on the team
was.
before, right? Yeah.
It
So
exactly was. Yes.
yeah.
Now you're just opening all kinds of like old amazing memories. I remember this the first time we talked. Yes. Yeah.
So I have
Mm,
for those who don't know me, I have a unique strategy when I'm hiring or helping build talent for leadership teams is I really look at unique skill sets that usually most hiring manager overlooks. And I usually have to talk leaders into like, you got to think about this person from this perspective. And usually I can, if people start to trust me because they see the great hires that I get because of this sort of, I always pick things. And you stuck out to me like that. And then once I talked to you, I
mm,
was really blown by how much you had accomplished and really not that long in your career. You hadn't been a leader that long. Well, you'd been a leader for a while, but I was used to talking to people who've been leaders for 20, 30 years, but you had
mm,
accomplished a lot in a short amount of time.
mm,
And I remember you telling me, I was like asking you to show me a little bit about what you've been doing. And this is where you taught me one of my biggest learning lessons and is now part of a huge fundamental piece of the optimized talent framework that I create for companies is that I realized that the top performers, the people that are really in the trenches making things happen, those leaders that really go get it done, tend to not talk about themselves very well. So you were so humble. You were so like, "Oh, well, I don't know if I've really done that much." And then I would ask you, like, clarifying questions, and you'd ramble about it, and then you'd say, like, all this stuff you've done, but it would
mm,
take you a while to get there. And then I'm like,
mhm.
"Oh, wait a second. You actually are exactly what we're looking for. You have exactly the skill, but
Mhm.
you and then what we figured out and we were the first person that I ever figured this out with, and I felt so silly that I'd been a recruiter and in staffing my whole career and had never figured this out. You had been promoted almost your whole career. You hardly ever
Mhm.
interviewed for that many roles, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly,
Yep.
and that we uncovered that you had barely interviewed much in your career. Most people knew you for the body of your work, and they would just come hire you because or they would promote you because you would go get it done. And so when it came to interviewing at a place like Amazon, we had to really I think it took us months to get you prepped to be able to go through an interview, if I remember right. Was that right? When we met, it was I you really helped me fill a missing puzzle, especially while I was having a hard time getting people hired from Amazon or AWS, but also really at that leadership level. And you were instrumental in helping me uncover something that I feel silly that it took so long to figure out. Um, Especially that I've been doing this work a very long time. But you helped me see that you had been one of those people when we unraveled it you'd not really interviewed very much in your career. You'd been tapped for most of your roles. You've been promoted and
Mhm.
known for your work. And sort of word of mouth sort of led you to these like great roles where you're leading over teams and all of that. And what I realized is when we would ask you sort of prep questions, you would ramble. You didn't really talk about yourself. And it
Mhm.
made me realize like, oh wow, if you're really one of those top performers that gets promoted all the time, you're not given
Mhm.
any experience in interviewing. You're not giving any
Mhm.
ability. So everybody knows you for the body of your work, but you don't know how to talk about yourself. And so we spent several months
Mhm.
really getting you prepped and ready to go through one of
Yeah.
our big leap, high performance hiring events that I had created. And
Mhm.
I was pleasantly surprised that you were like so game to go down with my methodology and try all this different behavioral preparing and
Mhm.
but, in those days I was still sort of experimenting with some really new kind of things that other people weren't doing. And you
Mhm.
were such a gracious leader to work with me to help you because I was like, I think I know where to put you, but we're gonna have to work to get so other people can do this. So How was that experience for you? And what did you come out of that experience with?
Oh, geez. It's funny as you're saying this now. I just like one of those. I definitely did the heads
Aw.
down, a little ashamed. But you know what? As a leader, I feel like it was one of the best things that happened to me. Let me
Mm,
explain. Learn and just be better, right? I did not realize I had this blind spot either, right? I
mhm,
think, for me, it was always there was the curiosity that actually even led us to my first conversation with you was this curiosity about the cloud and the impact that this was going to make fundamentally around the world. And so I think that was even where our conversation started. And, before you know it, you started asking all these other questions. And I'm like, yeah, we just do stuff. I love technology a lot, right? And I also love business. So I've realized I'm this guy that I consider myself, a businessman who just happens to love technology, right? Was kind of, some of the things I started describing myself with. And I remember as we started talking more and more, I actually even realized as well that I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think I'm articulating properly, like the challenges I had to really unravel and get to a state that I thought was really preparing the company for what was next. Um, Funny enough, that whole experience actually taught me a lot. I mean, that's why I actually leaned in on with you a lot because it was an opportunity for me to learn as well, right? Of how to just be able to articulate things better. And so what I did, I didn't just like, go through that process with you of the interview. I actually, when I joined Amazon afterwards, I actually took this step a step further. So the
mm,
first part was the fact that I realized there was this program within Amazon called Bar Raiser, right? Where,
mm,
these are folks who get an opportunity to just make sure that whoever was joining the organization was going to raise the bar, right? And so there's no better way to both learn about the culture, about the organization, for the organization, and then also how to interview people. And so guess what? I became on this other side where I did so many interviews that I think now I've had the opportunity to do more than 250 interviews since I joined. And so you get to really understand now what good looks like as well. So, so I knew that
mm,
that was a blind spot. And as a leader, your job is always to, hey, how do you keep improving? And because better never stops is what I always tell my team. And that also
mm,
goes with you as a member of that team. And so that was number one. And then number two, I actually realized that in a way, when you're having an interview, you actually it's a bit of a branding exercise, right? It's another way to like kind of look at that. So I thought that was a mental model that I'm like, I should employ this more, right? And so believe it or not, I started really diving deeper, long after our interview, started diving deeper into just branding, personal branding. And happy to say that I actually gave my a talk at the Black Professionals in Tech Network. I gave a talk around activating your personal brand to over 2,000 people, on
mm.
stage. And it was one of their keynotes. And for me personally, that was just, I shared a bit of my journey, my struggle with things like this, and how I've
Mm.
just like, I truly just embraced it and fell in love with it. And then, of course, now I'm trying to like share and give back as much as possible so people don't have to go through the same thing, right? But that was my takeaway from all of that. You had to do something about it. And I'm very proud that I was able to make that happen.
Yeah, you were such a shining example and really taught me so much of where my own blind spots were around. And that really changed the course of my talent acquisition, leadership development, because I was
Mm,
like, oh my God. Then I started
mm,
to notice like 50 to 75% of the candidates that were getting turned
mm,
down that were really like, or within that like creme de la creme of what we actually wanted to hire fit just like
mhm.
your profile. They were
Interesting.
extraordinary but
Mm,
hadn't interviewed in a long time, in 10 years,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
they didn't have that language around how to talk about themselves, or they'd ramble, or they
Mhm,
all these simple things that just and it's you only
mhm.
have 2 to 5 minutes to answer a
Yeah.
question in the STAR method and
Mhm,
really clear and concise about who you are at a company like an Amazon or a Google, and
mhm,
most
mhm.
people can't actually do it. And I
Yeah.
think I can't believe how blind I was that people couldn't do that Um,
Yeah.
and I'm sure as a bar raiser, you're pretty much that experiences too. And I found the people who actually can answer are not usually the
Mm.
people we want to answer. We want to
Yeah.
hire, right? The people tend to
Mm.
be really arrogant, not
Mm.
like so super full of themselves, less
Mhm.
humble,
Mm.
um, less the go-getters. They're
Yeah.
great at talking about themselves. And so I think it is, as a leader, how do you find about how to look on the other side of it as an interviewer, where you
Mhm.
look at screening out, like that's one of the other things I felt like I taught your leadership team and many of the other
Mhm.
training, leadership development trainings that I would do within, especially when we were in Francesca's organization, where
Mhm.
I would coach you how to have open-ended conversations to look at candidates through a different lens. What would you say
Mhm.
you've done with that, or how have you looked at candidates so that you make sure you're getting really those top performers and those humble, really go-getters that you're looking for?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic point you brought. But one thing I actually forgot to mention, which I think is always important to mention, is that I think your patience through that preparation process for my interview with Amazon was critical.
Hmm.
Because I think you could have easily like, "Oh, okay, yeah, there's nothing here. The same kind of mental model you've always used before, not seeing that, right? But I think
Mhm.
the openness to try something new, as you mentioned earlier about the experiments that you always conducted, I think that was also very critical for the minds to meet, if you will, right? And so what I've always tried to do now moving forward, because I don't know if every candidate I'm going to talk to has had an opportunity to, there's a lot of amazing, recruiters as well at Amazon, but I don't know if everybody would have held hands like you held my hand preparing for the interview, right? And so what I actually try to do is it's quite simple, but I think giving the candidates the comfort that look, it's you've probably done a lot of amazing things. And I actually say this before we start the interview. I'm like, you've probably done a lot of amazing things, right? You probably had some really good coaching from the Amazon recruiters, right? Just be yourself. Just tell me what you've done, right? That's and so I almost and I've lost count of how many times candidates have said, "Oh, wow," and you literally see the shoulders drop because they also
Mhm.
tense already. That's it's a big interview for them. You see shoulders drop and people just relax and just answer the question, because I know that would have helped me, right? I know I had
Mhm.
more help from you, but I know it goes a long way, and so whenever I coach other folks who are becoming amazing interviewers within Amazon as well, I always try to make sure I instill the same kind of just little things because those words matter. They can make or break an interview as well, right? So, but yeah,
So true. I mean, there's
um,
all these
yeah,
studies that show that, people will interview better, perform better if they feel seen and
hmm
heard.
yeah,
Study after study, and what you're saying just sort of proves that. It's like I too
hmm
always like, if I can give people the space of like, hey, you're not alone. Most of the top
hmm
performers, 75% of the top performers I work with all feel this, like they're not good enough to do this role or are scared. All of a
hmm
sudden you see them relax and they feel seen and
hmm
heard, and now they
yes,
go and just overperform. Like,
you
and
got
I
it.
think that is it's this is that part that AI can't do. This is the
hmm
emotional intelligence piece. When you give people that space to hold them,
hmm
they really do perform well. And it's such a
100%.
simple thing that we don't do in our interviews a lot of times. And so I love that about you. And I know you're
Mhm.
starting a mentorship program around this, aren't you? Aren't you doing some work in your I think it's in your personal life, or are you doing building it with a AWS? I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, for sure. So like for me, I'm actually doing on my a little bit of AWS as well, and also on a personal front, right? So I feel like
Mhm.
it's so important because for me, like one of the thing I know and believe very strongly in is that even to get to the position that I am today, I stood on someone's shoulder. In this
Right?
case, I can say I stood on yours, right? And a lot of the
Aw.
other folks who mentored me to get to where I am. And I think it's okay for me to hold a few folks on my shoulder as well to get there,
Mhm.
right? Because a lot of people have amazing aspirations. And one thing I always say is that, um, you know, sometimes what you just need is the opportunity.
Mm.
That's it.
It's so true. So
Just the
true.
opportunity, right? And so like whatever I can do to pour and give back to give people that opportunity, and to be successful, I will always prioritize that, always.
I love it. Yeah, and are you
Mm.
looking to build some of that? I think you're moving from Canada to the Bay Area, right?
That's right. Big move. Geez,
You're gonna
man.
be in my neighborhood.
It's fun. Yeah, tell me about it. I'm excited about that, actually. We actually get to see in person from time to time and keep learning from each other. It's funny because I think what a lot of folks may not know, and I knew this for sure, right? But sometimes it hits you when you first go to this new location where you're relocating to. But the population of all of Canada is less than all of California. Just California. Jesus Christ. Like it's so 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 let's just say there was a lot of even trying to look for the right place to live and all these other considerations you have to put in place. There was a lot to consider, right? But love the journey so far. I think it's been quite the learning process, but really looking forward to it and excited about it as well.
Aw, I'm excited for you. This is a really big journey. You're one of the few clients
Thank
that I
you.
got to meet really ahead of time. So we had already had lunch here in San Francisco a couple times.
Yes, that's right.
So I'm excited for you to be here. I feel like you're gonna
Mhm,
you're gonna find some
mhm.
really great community here, and
Yeah,
I'm here to help any way I can. You know that.
you always are. Thank you. Thank you.
So tell me some innovative, we've talked a little bit about your journey, which was really
Mhm,
innovative in the work that, talent optimization frameworks that I build for companies and
mhm,
organizations. And even that private leap to success executive coaching I do, where I'm coaching people privately. Um,
mm,
I feel like I learned so much from your vulnerability and sharing with me that, oh, wow, this is a blind spot for me. So that now I
mhm,
use your story all the time to help clients, both private
mhm.
and corporate. So I hope that's okay. But it
Oh yeah.
really does make such a difference when, like, I don't use your name, but I always talk about how much you had done and how, you're interviewing, and where that was. And
Mhm,
what I find is just fascinating on both the interviewers and the interviewees, this
mhm.
is this huge blind spot for so many people. And so I just, again, thank you so much for
Of
your
course.
courage and energy in doing that. What are
Mhm,
some other innovative things that you've been up to? I mean, we haven't gotten to work together as much in the last 2 years, but
mhm,
so what have you been up to lately? What kind of cool,
mhm.
innovative things are you doing that is sort of moving the needle around hiring, leadership, innovation? What you up to?
Yeah. Yeah, there's always something cooking. There's so much to do. So much to do. So one of the things that I really taken a lot of interest in is trying to get more women into technology.
Mm,
I'm looking at this, like I got three sisters, and I'm looking at just like how I actually get into computer science in the first place. For me, I'm always like big on trying to just look 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, of where
mhm.
the world is kind of going, the trends and all that stuff. That's what got me into computer science in the first place, right? And I remember when I was in computer science, the classes were not as full. There was barely one or two women in the classes, and for me, that was always very intriguing, and I, then observed it, didn't do anything about it, right? At the
Mhm,
time, did not, what I mean. And so the moment I got into a position where I could start to make a difference, man, especially you go into the workplace sometimes and you realize that, hey, man, well, I know that obviously I didn't always look like the folks who were in the room with me, but there was one very glaring, obvious and type that was not in the room. And I knew that I had to try to do something, especially about the gender part of it, right?
mm,
And so I actually started putting together, an initiative. I called it the Reach Back Initiative, and the whole
mm,
idea was that we wanted to try to get more women into technology. And so we kind of thought about, okay, how do we go about solving this kind of problem? It's a big problem to solve for, right? Let's not act like it's a small one. And so we started going all the way back to even go, oh yeah, we started going all the way back to even like high school, right? And trying to encourage and talk about some of the cool things that you can actually do with technology and the kind of problems that you could solve with this, right? To just kind of showcase, because sometimes you learn the theory in school, but not necessarily how you can apply it, right, in
Mhm.
real life. And so we just started painting a bit of a picture of, yeah, these are some of the things that you can do. You, if you have the right knowledge, you can solve problems like this. And so we went all the way back, and then we also went to universities as well. We women in computer science, computer engineering, and actually started telling them about the programs at AWS and the role of solutions architects and all of that. And I remember very vividly when I first this I was actually inspired to do this because I remember we were trying to hire quite a bit when I first joined, and I went to a career fair. At the career fair, I realized that no, there was me, in the table, the AWS table, and we had the developer team. They were on the other side of the table, and of course, myself and my one architect, we were the solutions architects, at that booth. And I remember the lineup of students trying to talk to the developers like around the block, and I'm like, what's going on? So of course, me being Jackson, I started trying to have fun with them, right? So I'll go to the lineup and I'm like, are you aware of the solutions architecture role? And I literally did this, across, just, of course, whenever I go close, a lot of them would try to listen in. So I just started speaking a little bit louder. Who's aware of the solutions architecture role? Most of them are like, no, not interested, don't know about it. And I'm like, why don't you all come here? And then, of course, I bring them to the side of the table and I start to tell them about the role. And a lot of them are like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. You get to do a little bit of business, a little bit of technology. We didn't think about that. We did not know it existed. I'm like, huh, there's a trend here,
Mhm.
right? And so I started zoning in on that. And so that was the baseline for our entire program to just kind of make sure that we almost evangelize the SA role, solutions architects. And
Mhm.
it was an amazing. Like we've been doing this now for a few years, and the outcome has been absolutely amazing. Just getting the visibility, and so now we've moved beyond just women trying to get into, I mean, like women in computer science, into women trying to get into technology, right? And so we just started slowly, doing what we can to, try to get it to 50-50 as much as possible.
That's extraordinary. I love, and it must feel so
Mhm,
rewarding to get that, feel that moving of the needle. And there has been a
mhm,
backlash too. There was a nice spike in
mhm,
more women in technology. And then
mhm,
I don't know if it was the pandemic, but there seemed to be a backlash where there was like a retreat almost of gender um,
mhm,
presence in
mhm,
technology roles. So I
mhm.
think it's amazing timing on this, and
Yeah.
I'm curious to see, you know, is there any sort of outcomes that have come? Like, have we gotten some hires from this, or some ways
Oh
that
yeah.
like those have come back, and what have they said?
Yeah, no, lots of hires for sure. It has been and continues to be amazing feedback, right? And so let's
Mhm.
just say that we've gotten enough feedback to keep going,
That's
to keep
great.
going.
That's exciting.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. That's what I say for sure. I mean, like for me, these are the kind of stuff that is really exciting. This is where you know that you're making a difference because this technology train is not stopping anytime soon. If it goes
Mm-mm.
way too far, the chances of getting the kind of diversity, inclusion, equity that you want to see could be lost very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing, and I noticed that I did a lot of work in solutions architecture at AWS, more than probably any other company I've done. I've done all kinds of roles at every company, but that was most of a lot of our leap events were really very focused on that area. And you really did start to notice that so many people didn't realize the range of that role. And even like
Mhm,
the
mhm,
different I would do events for 5 different divisions of AWS that all had solutions
mhm,
architecture, but every one of those divisions had a different profile for solutions architect. So the
mhm,
range of skill sets in theory was actually exponential of
mhm.
when people say like, "Oh, well, we're not a fit for this role." Okay, let me go try and work for this other division, right? Let
Right,
me go
right.
for this. And I think
Mhm,
that's where, the schools aren't really teaching that. Most people are just
mhm,
going for the straightforward software developer, engineer,
mhm,
not
mhm.
the solutions architect or these. There's all these new kind of hybrid roles that have a lot of technology, but also you're dealing
Yeah,
with customer, you're dealing with sales, you're dealing with product
Hmm.
development, you're dealing with all of this. And those, there's such a range needed for that. And I think that's honestly where there's more technology roles going to be in our future versus,
Oh yeah.
less developers and more of that. What do you think about that?
Oh, 110%. I think it's funny. Let me share a funny story. Maybe not so funny now, but I'll share a story nonetheless around how I found out about the solutions architecture role. Um, I so I immigrated to Canada from Nigeria. Nigeria
Hmm.
was big oil and gas, like really, really big in oil and gas. I think sixth largest producer in the world, if I'm not mistaken. And my aim was to graduate computer science, work at Shell Canada, eventually transfer to Shell in Nigeria, and continue my life. We'll take it from there sometime, right?
Right.
And and I remember very, very vividly, like I used to prepare for this interview so much because I know the best way to get into Shell was to actually get into the internship program. And I remember
Mm.
when the opportunity came, I remember I prepared so hard. Like, Siobhan, this was my dream. I prepared so hard for this interview. And the opportunity finally came, even though the counselors in the office knew me. They knew me and they knew specifically the job I wanted to do. And I remember they used to always laugh whenever I came, like, because those days there was no internet. So it was always like I had to go into the office and, well, there was internet. Email was not as prevalent as a way of communicating. So they actually used to have the bulletin board, print stuff, and then you go look at it, right?
Right.
Anyways, yeah, that's
Oh,
when email was just becoming a
oh,
thing. Old school, man. It's funny to look back now. I'm like, yeah, and this was only no joke. I think this was probably like 2003 or maybe, yeah, thereabouts. Anyways, um, I remember when the interview finally there was an interview, and I'm like, okay, mission number one, I have to at least get into that. Like, I got to be one of the folks that they interview. There was 5 spots. There was 25 of us that were going to interview for 5 spots. Oh man, like it was on. Like, this is it. Like, my dream was it right in front of me. Worked so hard, prepared for this whole thing. And I remember it was the day of my interview, and I remember I gave it my all. I was,
oh.
I was as prepared as I was. A little nervous to start, but I gave it my all. And then I came to find out at the end of that interview that they were going to get back to us within 5 business days. I'm like, okay. And I went home, told mom, I'm like, hey, mom, man, I think this is it. I'm ready. Like the dream is about to start. And 5 days comes along, and I remember, that day before the office opened, where they were going to post the names of the five. I was there looking through the peephole, waiting for someone to come open the door for the students to finally come in. And I obviously I see the lady go post things on the bulletin board. The door finally opens, and I rushed right to the very front, taking a look at the bulletin board. And I remember finding just looking through the entire board, and eventually I found Shell and the selected candidates. And I remember looking up and down and up and
Mm.
down. Uh, yeah, my name was not on the list. Uh,
Aw.
um, it's funny. She always still, tugs at me whenever I talk about this. Right? I remember, at that time, there was no cell phones were not as prevalent. My mom had called because she knew we're gonna find out that day. She had called a few times, and I got home and then I saw the phone ring again, and I did not answer. And of course, what I did not realize, most folks don't know, my mom is very relentless. She doesn't give up. She would keep calling to answer the phone. So at some point, I had to answer that call, and I did. And I answered with a long pause, and she knew
Mm.
right away. She knew right away, and she didn't even ask. She just said, son, in the end, everything will be okay. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. That was it. That was all
Mm.
she had to say. I had to pick myself back up. I had dreams after all that I had to accomplish. Like, this should not derail me. And I remember finally, And two later, there was a company, that called Sun Microsystems. Now they've been purchased by Oracle a few years back now. But I remember, Sun said, hey, they were looking for a solutions architect. I'm like, solutions architect, what is this? This is kind of, I did my research, so of course, and then I got a chance to talk to them. But it's funny because the pressure was not really there with Sun. I'm like, like I'm not sure, like how's this going to work out. I kind of know about the social architect, but nobody really talked about it in school. And so I interviewed with them, and I was so myself. I'm cracking jokes. I'm like, having fun with all kinds of fun and stuff, right? And they said they were. So of course, at the end of the interview, they say, oh yeah, they'll get back to us, in 5 business days. I got a call that evening that they wanted me to join the team.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and let's just say I never look back. And today, of course, I have an opportunity, very unique opportunity to lead multiple hundreds of solutions architects all over the world and solving some of the hardest problems that customers have. And that's, it's, yeah, never give
It's
up on what you
extraordinary.
want to do. Hmm.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like that's one of those things that I really feel like your story, is perseverance and also always finding like, okay, that
Hmm.
wasn't the right one for me. What is the next thing for me?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, it's
Absolutely.
a pretty beautiful story. And I feel like I've watched you grow and thrive and like, you know, you have been one of those people that like I see where you see your obstacles. So I can almost see you at that board looking and going, okay,
Hmm.
already plotting, having your moment, you're where you're having your feelings. But then you're
Yep.
like, you know what? I have a dream and how, okay,
Hmm.
universe, show me how to get to that. And then I
That's it.
think my other takeaway from that is that the interview that you did with Sun, you brought
Hmm.
your full authentic self. You're laughing
That's
and
it.
joking, right? Like
Hmm.
you have such a charismatic leadership, natural leadership about you. That was the first thing that came out in my conversations with you. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of those things that I see people almost hide. Even the most
Hmm.
experienced leaders, they get nervous when they interview and they forget to
Hmm.
be their authentic self. But at the end of the day, whether people want to admit it or not, they're
Hmm.
looking at your personality and do they want to work with you?
A
Like,
hundred,
do
a hundred
they,
percent,
right?
a
Like,
100%. Yes, I could not agree more. Right? It's funny because one, as you kind of mentioned there about the leadership piece. There's I got another story if you don't mind. Okay,
oh, I'd love it.
about the
Please
leadership
tell.
piece, right? Okay, so this was I remember when I was actually first, leadership of something I've always been very, very passionate about. And I remember, when I was always a leader, within the team, but not a leader of the team, right? And
Mm,
keywords here, I'm purposely trying not to use the word manager. It's very intentional because for me, I think one of my favorite quotes always said that, manager tries to do things right, and a leader tries to do the right thing. Very, very strong
mm.
believer on that, right? And so is leadership. And so for
Wait,
me, like,
say that quote again because I think that's a powerful quote. Can you say that quote again?
yes, I said a manager tries to do the right things, and
Mhm.
leaders always try to do things right.
Mm. Wow, that's really powerful.
Yes, it is, right? Um, anyway, so I I remember applying for my first leadership position. And again, look, I think every disappointment is a blessing. Is the way I always kind of I've come to really appreciate the way life works, right? The harder the work you work, the luckier you get. And so I applied for this role, and I remember preparing again. It was like the next journey. Again, you see the trend here. Worked so hard preparing for this. Man, okay, I think I'm ready for this. This is what I'm going to talk about, the things I'm going to focus on, and all that stuff. And I remember the interview day came, and unfortunately, like, I mean, it was not the greatest experience for me, right? And I realized, I had prepared all kinds of PowerPoint presentations of even how I was going to, the challenges I saw in the team, how I was going to try to start to address them, what success looks like, the strategy, the vision, and all of this stuff. And I remember the leader who was interviewing me was literally, um, it was he was packing his bag because he had a train to catch, right? It was towards the end of the day. And of course, but even with all of that, I'm like, okay, I'm just still gonna show up, as best as I possibly can. That's what I have control over, right? It's important for me to still just show up. Um, I did, and I learned a few days later that I did not get the job. I think they already had someone in mind, and that was devastating. It was, it
Mm.
really was. But I think like anything else, right? Like these disappointments, it's also important for you to be able to use them as the fuel for, okay, no, like you cannot give up. Like this is the kind of like life will always happen like this where you hoped for it to look a certain way and it comes to you in a way that you did not even imagine, right? So as they say, you cannot keep knocking on the door that's closed. Like look for the one that's open, right? And keep
Mhm.
chasing that dream. And so I didn't get the role, and then eventually a year and a half goes by. They try to give me an opportunity to start to learn about leadership and whatnot. But in true fashion, and I think we kind of talked about this earlier, I truly started diving deep into what it means to be a leader. A lot of things that you will notice
Mm.
is that you will see what good looks like, and you will see what bad looks like, and you need to learn
Right.
both. You need to learn both.
Both teachers,
I'll
right?
tell
Yeah.
you have to learn both because the thing is that when times are good, you it's very easy to lead, very easy. When times are not so good, the wheels sometimes can fall off and they fall off real bad. And those are people that you're dealing with. Oh yeah, right. And so for me, like so I started to really observe and really dive deep into this. Of like I had this new mission of trying to like be the best that I can be as a leader, right, and investing in helping other people grow. And so I started diving real deep, and then out of randomly there was an issue at one of my customers, really helped them, even though it was not my company's problem, right? But I was the face of the company. I showed up anyways. I was there for 3 straight days. They had a major outage, 3 straight days. Helped them out. In that meeting, I could have sat down and just like let people do work, but no, I'm going around to different teams that are trying to solve those problems and asking questions and sharing ideas and throwing all kinds of things out. What can I help with? Like, you know, what I did not know is that someone was watching me the whole time,
Oh.
watching me the whole time. Um, And I think this is where it becomes so important to always do things even when nobody is watching. Because for me personally, I was just trying to go help, customer obsessed, trying to do what was best for the customer. And then I got a call from Canadian Tire that, and I had been connected. So the leaders had talked, and someone had made a recommendation to talk to Jackson. This goes to your point about not interviewing, right?
Mhm.
But I interviewed in other ways. It was the action that was the interview, right? Um, and so those folks, they brought me in. I had a conversation with them, and they took a chance on me, and I'm forever grateful for that. But that also fired me up in the sense that it was important for me to give people who had never led before, to give them a platform again, an opportunity to lead. You get
Mm.
everybody starts somewhere, and there's
Mhm.
going to be continuous learning, and you make mistakes, but you got to have be in a safe environment to learn, right? And and be there to catch them if they fall. Like that's a job of a leader, right? And then hopefully they pass it on and be better than anything that you've ever done. And then, so for me, I took all of that so close to heart that I've actually, I took it upon myself. I think I've so far been able to get about 4 people to become future managers, right?
Aw,
And before I left Canada, over 60% of my team were first-time managers.
that's
People who had never
amazing.
led before. Yeah. So sometimes this is like, unfortunately, it was a disappointing situation. Of course it was. It was painful at the time it happened. Disappointing for me personally, right? But you got to take lessons learned from those things and just move them forward and keep going forward.
I find most pain, I feel like most innovation comes from uh, software not working, a bad bug, a bad
Mm,
leader. You
mm,
you crisis is actually where innovation comes from, and I
Mhm,
think, I have 5 different businesses, and every one of them have started from some sort of crisis, everything falling
mhm,
apart. Even the LEAP
mhm,
program was because I couldn't get people hired at
mhm,
Amazon as
mm,
leaders. And I was like, what am I missing? And you were one of those secret
mhm,
ingredients to help me figure that out. Right. It was
mhm,
like, and
mm.
then all of a sudden I could get twice as many hires as anybody else because
It's amazing.
I figured out the formula, but I had to hit
Mhm.
that wall a lot. Right. And I think
Yeah.
it's funny when I was actually doing, one of the things that I'll do is I'll go around like, hey, do you know people in your area who are cool to talk to? And I think that's how I found you, is that
Mhm,
people were
mhm,
talking about you and the work you
mm.
did because I don't even know if you were looking. And
No, I
that's what
wasn't.
I go look for people who other people talk about because those
Mm,
are those leaders that you're talking about. Those are the people who,
mm,
again, heads down, doing the work, making it happen.
mhm,
That's another
mhm,
one of my little secret sauces of how to like really find extraordinary leaders. And those are the
mm.
people who were like, I used to have one leader is like, yeah, I'm one of those people that if the toilet needs to be cleaned, I'm going to go clean the toilet. Right. Like,
That's it. Yeah.
I'm not going to wait for everybody else to go do that. I'm going to,
Mhm.
if it needs to get done and if it makes the whole company run better, I'm going to go do that. Right. Like,
Exactly.
and you want
Mhm,
those leaders who are just, it's one team, it's one way of thinking,
mhm, mhm.
and we
Yeah.
had the extraordinary advantage of working with someone like Francesca Vasquez at AWS, who honestly has been one of the better leaders I've ever really worked with. She
Mhm.
was so good at creating this, or is this still? She still is here. So she's,
Oh, yeah. Mhm,
so great at creating what she always calls is #1team. Like those
mhm,
kinds of things where you're working with leaders, and I feel like you're one of those people as well, where it's um, just it's so innate and organic to do that and then to pass that on and then help spread
mhm,
generations of leaders and not
mhm.
managers. We don't need any
Yeah,
more managers. We need
yeah.
leaders,
Well
and
said.
we need every individual to be a leader so that then they
Mhm.
can also um, be managing leaders. I think is a
Yes,
better
well said. It's true.
way.
I mean, I think, by the way, Francesca, I learned a lot from Francesca. She's an amazing, amazing leader. I feel like she set the truly the right tone of how to row the boat together to working
Mhm.
towards the goal.
Yeah.
She
I
really
there's
did.
a few women
Mhm,
in my career that have
mhm,
just been off the charts in showing how to be a leader, not telling,
mhm.
and
Yeah,
she is one of those. So if any of
without a
those
doubt.
listening, Francesca Vasquez at AWS, you should probably, she's all humble. She'd probably be laughing at me sort of
She
shouting
will.
her out. But she was one of those innovators that was willing to try on my very experimental process back then. And she was the only leader
Mhm,
willing to do it back then. And then
hmm.
everybody started seeing her success, and then they're like started jumping on the bandwagon. And
Yeah.
and we would talk a lot about that of like you got to be willing to take some big risks. And I think one of the things
Mhm,
that I've seen with you is in the time that I've known you, you've grown extraordinarily in how you lead teams, and
mhm,
and also your advocacy in not just at AWS, but outside of that, and really,
mhm.
again, not just bringing in, women into technology, but just reminding people how to bring their heart and soul into
Yeah.
the whole piece. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you on that, and I've watched you actually really grow in that, and so thank you for letting me be a part of witnessing that and be on the team on Team Jackson to cheer you
No,
on.
I
So,
know. I think I said the thank you goes to you, right? I mean, I think, look, like I said at the beginning, I think you could have seen something that did not fit what you were expecting and walked away easily. I think the openness that you also had as well to be able to take a chance and do something different, right? Hats off to you for that, right? So, no, thank you.
well, I feel like it's mutual. I got my
That's fair.
friend
We'll settle for
Jessica
mutual.
definitely told me, she's like, "Oh, that Jackson, he's great." I'm like, "Yeah, I told you."
We'll settle for mutual.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're heading towards the end of our podcast time. Is there any sort of lasting thoughts that you kind of want to leave people with? And I'll probably have you
Mm,
back on here again, and we can chat about some
mm,
other opportunities and things of really cool things that you've done. But is there anything you would like to leave with?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot that I feel like I would love to share, but I'll just try to, keep say something very simple. One of my favorite quotes goes that you need to start by doing what's necessary and then doing what's possible. And before you know it, you'll be doing the impossible.
Oh,
Whatever
wait,
it
say this
is,
one more time. Say this one more time, because I
I'll
feel
be
like this
happy.
is
I'll be happy to.
okay.
I say you got to start by doing what's necessary and
Okay.
then what's possible. And before you know it, you will be doing the impossible. Whatever you set your mind to, you got to just try. Just take that first step. In a lot of cases, some folks will see you, it's like you plant a seed and under the ground, as they say about the bamboo, some species in the bamboo family, that the seed will stay under the ground sometimes for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people may watch you and see you watering the ground. Now, what those people have is sight, but not vision. You know what
Mm,
you're watering that ground. You know what's underneath that soil, right? Keep watering that ground, and like the bamboo tree, that when it germinates, it can grow up to 90 meters in a matter of weeks, right? When I first got that first leadership role, leading over 100 people in my organization, a lot of people said, "There's no way. How do you go
mm-hmm.
from being a team lead to be able to do this?" What a lot of them did not realize is that I've been watering that ground long before the opportunity came.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to start by doing what's necessary and then what's possible. And before you know it, it looks like you're doing the impossible.
It's so true. Your whole, knowing the arc of your story and from, our
Hmm,
beginning together, it was so clear that I saw that in you. I wouldn't have, quoted that exact saying, but that's so
hmm,
I saw that in you. Like you just
hmm,
had this unstoppable vision and
hmm,
action, like accompanying that vision that was
hmm,
um, remarkable. And that to me is the secret ingredient to a true top performer. And that was
hmm,
sort of, my instincts and the frameworks that I create is to try to help find people like you who have
hmm,
that action to vision to
hmm,
action, like
hmm,
this simple thing that doesn't matter whether you get the job, don't get the job, you stay on point, get the role, don't
hmm.
get, you know,
Yeah.
you know, the vision changes, org changes, still the vision is on point. You're going to keep moving forward. And I think, but you
Hmm,
do it with such this, like, there's a difference between the way I feel like you do it, where it's this heartful, soulful, like, this is just who I am, versus I
hmm.
need to be competitive and do it against other people, which
Yeah.
doesn't ever work, honestly. Those types of people tend to not
100%.
be performers. They tend to not drive an organization forward. They tend to create a
Hmm.
lot of infighting. And what I
Yeah.
see in teams that you build, and anytime I've had to interact with the organizations that you've created,
Hmm.
they're thriving, excited, and the
Hmm.
customers
Hmm.
are happy because they feel like they're working with people who are their friends, and there's this
Exactly.
ecosystem of
Hmm.
vision to action. And so I
Exactly.
feel like your leadership really does I know, just so
Yeah.
you all know, I know him. This is true. That's not just a
Yeah.
really cool quote that we're going to use as a
Yeah.
clip. That is really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, at the end of the day, look, there are people behind the roles. I think you gotta it's people first. You take
Yeah,
care of the
it really
people, and
is.
everything else will take care of itself.
Totally is.
Yeah.
Well, Jackson, I think you're an amazing man. I feel honored to call you my friend, and it's been an amazing journey to be on this with you. And
Mhm.
come back and come visit with us again.
Look, I'll first to say, thank you for having giving me this opportunity to talk to you about very important topics, right? I truly do hope that people can take a thing or two from this. Kudos again for you doing this. This is you. Again, it's funny because whenever as we have this conversation, I'm just like, yeah, I have this like inside smile that I'm like, oh
Well,
yeah, this is so you, right? So keep doing the amazing work. I'm rooting for you.
I know. I really pretty much had a podcast way before I had a podcast. I've been doing leadership
There you go.
interviews for years and
Yeah,
years and
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
years.
You're doing an amazing job. I'm rooting for
Oh,
you. Right.
thanks. Well, I'm rooting for you too. And here in the Bay Area, we're going to go out to lunch and then we'll
Yes.
do a podcast and report about all your successes once you've kind of made it to the
Yeah.
California coast.
Yes, 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 for sure. Looking forward to that. I think it's gonna be fun, new challenges. But hey, you probably heard too about me embracing challenge. So bring it on.
Awesome. I'm excited to
All
have
right.
you. And with
Mhm.
that, we're going to say goodbye, a little goodbye music. And bye, everybody. Bye, Jackson.